Hey guys, welcome back for another Jedi journal entry. Today we will look at the Jedi training, belief structure, and the virtues that they aspire to. What does it mean to be a Jedi? What is required to become one? To become a Jedi, you will need a teacher first and foremost, as simply being a Force sensitive does not make one a Jedi. Just as having a samurai sword does not mean you are a samurai, nor does having a hood and throwing star make you a ninja. Your Jedi teacher must accept you voluntarily because they believe in your potential or your character. You must have the deepest commitment and the most serious mind if you are going to undertake the Jedi training. But you must also have patience. Patience to learn and patience to finish your training all the way through, since becoming a Jedi is not an easy challenge, and even if you succeed, it's a hard life. Plato had the idea that the ideal society should have a sect of well-trained, virtuous warriors to be the guardians of peace and justice for the citizenry. Aside from being virtuous, there would be a great deal of physical training for Plato's warrior class to undergo. This physical training is not just for brute strength, but is also done to improve the mind. Your body must be in the physical condition to enact your will. If you train your body to be able to obey your mental commands, you will be able to have greater mental discipline over other things too. Yoda makes like Plato and has Luke undergo a rigorous physical training regimen in the hot, humid swamps of Dagobah. An important feature that accompanies this physical training is an ongoing dialogue between master and student about the intricacies of justice and the nature of good and evil. By honing one's physical capabilities, they achieve a mental fortitude that allows them to push forward despite mental frustration. Luke is then coached to balance himself in the air. This balancing act forces Luke to concentrate and block out all distractions, and in doing so achieves control over himself in totality. Luke's balancing act is of course interrupted by visions through the Force of his friends being harmed, but so long as he was balancing, his ability to focus on his present task was complete. On the same line of balance comes the link to Aristotle's idea of balancing virtue in the golden mean. The golden mean is a way of evaluating action on an excess to deficiency scale, where virtue would be in the dead center. Both ends of the scale, whether it is excess or deficiency, are where one finds vice. An easy example, which I have given before in one of my earlier videos, was the virtue of courage. Courage would be in the middle. It's the virtue. If you are courage deficient, then you are a coward. But if you are courage excessive, then you are reckless. Recklessness and cowardice are vices, while courage and bravery are virtues. It takes discipline to stay balanced and be in the middle. Looking at the difference between recklessness and courage, we can use Aristotle as a guide. He might say that confrontation and/or risk becomes courageous if and only if both decision and just cause are involved. Bungee jumping for thrill-seeking would not be courageous because it lacks just cause. Luke's decision to rescue his friends on Cloud City, which he arrived at after careful consideration, would be courageous because it involves a just cause, saving his friends' lives. I would also add that fear is required for someone to be brave. If there is no fear, there is no risk, and with no risk, there can be no courage. But Yoda cites multiple times the dangers of fear, that fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. I talked about the nature of this platitude in my video on Stoicism in Star Wars if you want to hear a little bit more about that. But does Yoda mean that a Jedi should never feel these emotions? Not necessarily. The message is more meant that we should not let these emotions cloud our judgment and/or control us. We are to be in control of ourselves, and thus over our emotions. When Luke battles his father on the second Death Star, the Emperor goads Luke into using his aggressive feelings, but Luke pulls himself back from the brink and brings his aggression back under his control so that he is not consumed by it. Anger is a perfectly natural emotion, but Luke remembers his Jedi training and does not let the feeling control him. Righteous anger is also a potential feeling Jedi may encounter. Feeling angry about someone's unfair treatment at the hands of another can spur them to take action to correct the behavior. This is necessary for Jedi, whose role is to protect the innocent and maintain peace. But a Jedi should do so without being consumed by their anger or aggression. Jedi should often use non-violent means of conflict resolution before drawing their lightsabers. This does not mean the Jedi are pacifists, but it does mean that they do not seek to instigate or prolong conflict, and that they do not fight out of aggression, but rather that they fight to end conflict. Jedi remove their ego from the equation and engage in conflict dispassionately. They do not let their aggressive feelings get in the way of their spiritual balance or push out their reasoning capabilities. Under the control of one's reason, emotion can expedite the virtuous action that is needed at the time, as using reason alone can delay action. So again, it is not that a Jedi never feels these emotions, but rather they are not controlled by them. A Jedi may feel fear or anger, but a Jedi never acts from fear or anger. They act only when they are balanced and in control of themselves, when they are calm, at peace, passive. Yoda even tells Luke that only a calm mind can know the difference between the good side and the bad. Being in control of oneself also means confronting one's fears. Luke enters the cave on Dagobah and undergoes a trial. He fails before he even enters the cave when he takes his weapons with him instead of facing his fear and trusting in his connection to the Force. Inside, he confronts the image of Darth Vader, who embodies multiple things in Luke's mind, namely the Empire, Obi-Wan's killer, and the temptation of the dark side. Luke's inner conflict within the cave is his desire for revenge against Vader and his desire to become a Jedi and continue his father's legacy. Seeing his face inside Vader's helmet is a foreshadowing of Luke's parentage, true, but it also shows what he could become if he fails to resist the dark side's temptations, and it shows that his true enemy is himself and his inability to control his fear. This is all a sign that he is not ready for his confrontation with the real Vader, and he ends up defeated at the end of the movie. Luke's lack of self-awareness is an indicator of his lack of self-discipline, as you cannot control what you don't understand. Luke only realizes the significance of seeing his own face inside Vader when Vader tells him the truth, and this causes Luke great pain, very much like in Plato's famous Cave of Ignorance, where one inhabitant sees the flames projecting shadows on the wall, and is pained in his eyes because he has never seen such a brightness before. Luke, seeing himself in this new light as the son of Vader, forces him to revise the image he holds of himself, and this causes him existential pain. When Luke meets his father again in combat in Return of the Jedi, he overcomes his anger by seeing the good in him. This results in Luke forgiving his father and out of compassion refuses to fight or kill him. Luke proves that he is a true Jedi who resists evil, but does so motivated by compassion and forgiveness. Forgiveness allows us to free ourselves from guilt and resentment. Plato's allegory of the cave and Luke's journey show that we too can grow in wisdom if we look inward beyond how we think we see ourselves and genuinely look at ourselves truthfully, seeing all of our faults and weaknesses so that we may take that information to improve ourselves. This honest view of ourselves gives rise to integrity, which allows us to see right and wrong more clearly. Luke, acknowledging that Vader is his father, allows him to be honest with himself, to grow in his wisdom, and thus to see the good in Vader. Luke's virtue of compassion is the Jedi virtue that opens the door to allowing Vader to redeem himself. Compassion, as Anakin put it, is an unconditional love that is essential to a Jedi's life. Compassion is distinguished from attachment and possession, and unconditional love does not necessitate romantic love, both of which are forbidden to Jedi. Jedi approve of compassion because it is a higher form of universal love, whereas inordinate attachment to a particular person or thing would be considered wrong. Compassion is a selfless love, whereas attachment leads to fear of losing that which we possess or desire to possess. Compassion values people for their own sake, regarding them as having intrinsic value. Plato's ideal warrior class would also have been forbidden from forming attachments and holding possessions that might conflict with their devotion to the Commonwealth or impede their ability to uphold peace and justice. There should be no temptation to disregard the public welfare, and this policy would allow the system to shortcut the possibility for corruption when one holds their own desires above the needs of others, much like Anakin when he was willing to risk war if it meant going back for Padme when she fell out of the gunship. But the virtue of loyalty demands that we subordinate our private interests in favor of more pressing needs. The Jedi Order could still accommodate loyalty with the prospect of a family life, so long as it does not interfere with public duty. For there's nothing wrong about having personal attachments, or nothing unethical, or that certainly doesn't mean that one can't still perform their duty. And we see this lesson adopted by Luke in the original expanded universe when he allowed the students at his Jedi Academy to be married and have families. Jedi training allows one to control objects with their mind, but the Jedi mind trick allows one to control people with their mind. Is mind control okay if it is used for a good purpose? Hard to say, given that everyone who does so would think they are using it for a good purpose. Some might say that every individual has intrinsic value and thus their free will should not be tampered with in any way. But on the other hand, our free-thinking opinions are influenced all the time by things around us. These can be things like ads, social media, news corporations, scientists making discoveries, movies, and music. This influence is an inevitability, especially to the weak-minded who may not have the impetus to pursue their development on their own, like smoking death sticks. And thus it is to be regarded as a responsibility by those who create influence. This is a responsibility to make sure that the influence goes toward the highest possible good and not toward what is expedient for oneself. The Jedi do not dominate the minds of others, but rather implant a positive narrative in their heads that can influence them toward a higher moral good. Jedi live by a code that encourages them to bring out the best of themselves and others for a higher purpose. Their nobility allows them to overcome personal interests in favor of this higher purpose or transcendent value structure, and their strength of character allows them to hold on to the virtues that define them even when the chips are down. The Jedi make it their focus to live in such a way that they do not allow their feelings or external forces to control them. They stay balanced and maintain control over themselves. Noble people often influence others around them, and thus their actions can serve as an inspiration to rally others to fulfill their potential and strive to uphold peace and justice as well. Acknowledging your own weaknesses so that you may rectify them and striving toward a higher purpose so that you can fulfill your potential may not necessarily lead to skill with a lightsaber, but it can make you a pillar of strength in your family or your community. Well, this concludes my thoughts on the training and virtues of the Jedi Order. If you enjoyed what I had to say, click the like button down below, subscribe for more of my content, which should be coming soon. If you want to receive notifications of when that will be, hit the little bell icon down below as well so you won't miss the next one. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you all next time. May the Force be with you.